Welcome to Michell Consulting's webinar series for Michell University. Today we're going to talk about Infor FACTS and the sales order process. For purpose of the demo, we're going to be using FACTS 7.7 for our demo. This will be recorded and be available on our website, so you can watch it at www.mitchellgroup.com. So let's begin talking about the sales order process. So from our master menu, we're going to click on Sales Order. And we're going to look here at the process. Today we're going to talk about the invoice entry and order entry. We have the ability of starting with a quote. We can then turn that quote into an order. And then we can take that order, we can confirm it in the invoicing. So we'll be focusing on these three today. So let's look here at the quotes. We have our quote entry. We can print quotes or series of quotes, and we can remove quotes. The quote entry screen is similar to the sales order and invoice entry screen. Here we can go ahead and we can add a specific customer, a new customer if we want to. We can search existing customers, and we can also search existing documents. Let's start with a customer. Here we see our customer, and we have from our setup, we have the balance information coming up. We can see here the ship tos. We can determine if we have multiple ship tos, the ship to we want to do. We can search. We can also create a temporary ship to. We can create a quote date for purposes of the demo. I'm going to put this date. We have an expiration date. We can set it to expire. We can also remove based on expirations, or we can leave it to have no expiration date. We can enter a reference. We can set it to a specific contract under the customer. And here we're going to enter the items. So we're going to enter an item. Again, we have set up in our settings to look at warehouse information. So we see that we have available and what we have on hand and committed. We have a quantity. So let's go ahead here and we're going to put 10. We see our warehouse and our pricing information. So we can look at price options. Go ahead and leave it like that. So we're just going to do a simple one here. We'll start off with just one line item. We're going to hit F4. Click Done. Yeah, we can give a discount. We have this set up for a 5% discount. We can determine our freight. We want to use freight. Within the system, we can determine our tax code and our memo. We click OK. I'm going to print the quote now. We see our quote. Let's go back. So we have our quote. Again, let's look a little bit about the quote screen, some of the options that we have available. As we saw before, we can search customers. We can also search specific quotes that we've already created, a document search. We can determine how we want to sort. So in this case, we're sorting by customer. We can put in our customer if we want to do our search. And we can see here, based on our date, we were at quote number 825. We do have some options. If we look here, we can delete the quote if we need to. We can use edit. We can add, insert, delete, and find items, which is also available here. We can add, delete, insert, and edit items. We can view information. Some of the windows we saw come up. We can view, we can do price searches. We can look at the agings, the past sales, additional quotes, committed, and so on. Information here. We can see these two are turned on. That's why we see these coming up. As we enter the quote, these are turned on. We have some options. We can look at the header detail, which is also available here. We can look at the line detail, which is, again, just available on the screen. We can do a lost sales entry. So this is more really in sales order. If we didn't have the product, we can flag it as a lost sales. We can define substitute items, interchanging items. We can also import items. We can also here with the go-to, this is grayed out because we're in our quote right now, and we have our help. So again, we see the header information here. We want to look at detailed header information. We can select on the header screen. We can add detailed information. Again, this is information that you don't want to have on the main screen, information you don't use on a daily basis, but if you need to get into it, you can see it through here. You can see the line information. So you can look at line detail. Again, you can set up to see information about the item in more detail. Again, stuff you would not really have on the screen. Stuff we don't do on a daily basis, but we need to look at it. We can go here. We can look at the costing of the item, look at the discounts. And this can all be controlled basically with password protected and with authorization. So we can have this where people can't actually edit or change the information. Okay, so again, we can add a new line. So by clicking this, we would add a line. We can delete the line. We can insert a line. So if we had 3 lines and we wanted to insert the line between lines 1 and 2, we can do an insert. And again, we can also edit this line. We're editing it in the mode up here. So again, you see the information that we have flagged to come up. So we can make any changes we want here. Let's click Done. And we're looking at our footer information, which we've seen before. We're going to click OK. And now we have this window. This is coming up because we're going to actually use this to convert the quote. What we did, once we create the quote and we've printed it, now it's available to convert. So now we have the customer who actually wants to take this order and we want to convert it into a sales order or a contract. You have some options. By default, it's set not to convert the quote. Maybe we don't want to convert it. We just wanted to make a change to the quote. We're not ready to convert it. We just wanted to make some changes to the price or the quantity. So we just leave it here. Click OK and go out. We have the option of converting all the lines. That means all the lines will be coming into either a sales order or a contract. We can also convert only the flagged lines. We have the option of flagging the lines on the screen for quoting purposes to bring over. We're going to convert all line items, and we're going to convert it to a sales order. We click OK. Again, we're converting the quote to a sales order, so now it's asking us some information. We have our requested ship date. If we're using jobs, we can set it to jobs with cost codes and so on. We're just going to go ahead and click OK. So now we've created, for this quote, we've created order 1910. We're going to click OK. And we see it was converted. And we're done. So now we've taken a quotation that was entered. The customer has come back. They decided they want to place an order. So we don't have to enter all the information again on the sales order. What we're doing is we're just going in and converting that quote into an order. So now we have an order. So if we exit this, we'll look at the order in a few minutes. So again, we see our quote entry. We see our quote print. This allows us to print several quotes. Again, we can look at the print, reprint function. For the ones we've done, we can select our specific warehouse or all warehouses. We can do it here. And again, we can select all quotes to print. We can search our quotes. Or we can type in the quotes we want to print. It allows us to batch print quotes. Quote removal. Again, gives us the ability of removing quotes. And again, we have some criteria, so we can select our warehouse. We can do it by salesperson, by customer, by status. You can do remove expired, sold, or all quotes. in the case of the date we saw, if the date's expired, we can do it. Sold is that we have created a sales order and invoiced the product, so the quote is no longer, it's still there. We want to use it again, but we want to remove it. We could do that, or we can just do it all quotes with a specific cutoff date. Again, how you decide to run your business, you can set it up different ways. It gives you the flexibility of removing the quotes as per your process. So now let's go here and let's look at orders. We have our order entry. Today we're going to focus on just the order entry and the big ticket print. We'll have other series dedicated to other information like contract pricing and so on. Today we're just focusing on the process of going from a quote to a sales order to an invoice. So if we see here, if we go to order entry, we can then, as we say, we can create a new customer. We want to add a customer as we're entering it. We can do a customer search, and we can do a document search. Again, the screens are set up the same to make it easier for the user. Same information we saw in the quote. Again, you can see here how these are what we have displayed. So we're looking at customer display, price, and warehouse quantities. Again, we have some options. We can go to quotes or blanket orders, and we have our help. So let's go here, and let's do a document search. Let's search by document, and I believe it was 1910. There we go. So we're searching this. Again, we have, like we saw in the quote, we have the option of setting this information. Okay, we can also go into the options. We can set the preferences. So if we always wanted to come up in, let's say, a customer search, we can do that. And again, we'll see that in detail in other series on streamlining the process and setting up the options. So we're going to select this one. And again, we're going to see that the information came over. So what we've done is we've taken our quotation, we've turned it into a sales order. Now again, we can edit the sales order. We have information about it. You can see here that the order date and requested date. I'm going to go ahead and change this to this date. And we have our reference, our shipping type, contract, if we're working with contracts. And again, here we have our item. We see the same process. We have the ability of adding additional items, so we can add a line. So we can go to, let's say, this one here. Again, we see what we have coming up based on our options here. We have our warehouse and so on, so that information is coming up. We're going to order 2 of these. We're going to commit it. Again, we can change our pricing. As you can see here, we have our pricing option set to open, and so on. Press F4. Now we're back to edit. Again, we have the same information you saw. We have our header information. So if we need to look at detail information from the header, you have it here. Again, more information. You can see the codes, and so on. We have our line detail. If we select item I-108, and we look at our line detail, again, we have detail information. Look at costing in here. We can browse warehouses. Maybe we don't have it in this warehouse. We want to go to another warehouse, and so on. Okay. We can also do deposits. If we take deposit on sales orders, we can actually enter a deposit. Here we can go in. So let's say this is a custom order and this requires a deposit. So we're going to add a deposit. Look at our terms code. And let's say we're just going to add $100. Put a check or credit card number. You can see the information here. We click Done. Now we have our deposit, so we're going to exit the order. Again, we have our footer information, which we can set up. We can have a note. If we're using freight, we can add our freight here. We can search our freight information, process freight. We'll go ahead and do this without freight. We can look at the deposits we've entered and also do it through here. See, we have a deposit here, so we can see our original amount, our deposit, and our balance remaining. We have the option again of printing the ticket now. I'm going to go ahead and print the ticket now. Okay. So we would see our ticket. So now we're back to enter our next order. So we see the process here. Again, we can look at document searches. We can search by document number. Again, we can call up our order, and now we see our order. Let's just exit that. So let's see what we have. We have our order entry. We printed it as we went along. We can also do the pick ticket print. What we could have done is we could have set it not to print. We can do a batch print or a reprint. So we can go to our pick ticket printing. We can go here, and again, we have the option of printing or reprinting or both. Since we had one printed and maybe one not, we want to do both. Again, like you saw before, we can select our warehouse. We can put our cutoff date. We want to print at a certain time. We can look here if they were non-remote tickets, web, remote, or all of them, if we like. We can look at the document type. We want all orders. Maybe we just want open orders. A lot of times this is used for back orders. At the end of the day, we've sold. We have some back orders. We want to print all our back order receipts for the warehouse so we can place our orders and prepare for the next day. We can also actually enter our documents here. We can search through here, and we can select our documents. And you have a wide range of doing it. You can see this is already printed. We set it this to print. We'll just do a both. One's on home. There's the one before that. This one here. And again, we can do all this. We can choose our printer. We can go to our print options if we want under our properties. We can select our printing information. And this allows us to do a batch print for information. So now we have our orders. So we entered our orders. So now we're ready to do our order confirmation. We've created our order, and now we're ready to create the invoicing for the end of day. So here we're going to go into our invoice mode. And you can see the first one is order confirmation. This is going to allow us to take the order that was created from the quote and actually create the invoice. So we create our order confirmation. We can call up our, again, we can search our document if we know our document. We can enter it here. And now we have some options. What we can do is we can assume shipment of all the committed quantities. Okay, so that's when we entered the order. When if we ordered 10 and we committed all 10, they'll ship. We can do not assume shipment. We can back order all the items. We can do not assume shipment, leave all items as committed, or we can do it line by line. So again, this is a preference of your business. Basically, if typically everything on the sales order is going to ship, you would assume shipment. So you want to just invoice or ship everything. If majority of the stuff's going to be on back order, it's not ready, and you want to do one, you would not assume the shipment. You would leave everything on back order and then go back and edit the ones you want. You can also assume shipment, leave everything as committed, and again change it. So you can either have them all shipped, leave them all not shipped, or in between. You can also confirm shipment line by line. So if you click on this one and you click OK, it's going to actually stop for every line. You can see line 1. So again, this gives you a flexibility of skipping it, leaving it on back order, and so on. And here comes line 2. And again, we have our required dates. And again, we still have the option of doing this. So you can see here in this case that we ordered 2, we shipped all 2, we ordered 10, and we're shipping all 10. But again, we can come here, we could edit the line. And we see our information coming up that we have determined. So we can go here, we can ship 8. Leave 2 committed. Now, we have this information here. What we're doing is, because we actually executed a back order, so we set this to back order. Now, because it's on back order, we have some options. Because we're in here and we're doing a confirmation of a document, and this is also available on the sales order. If you back order the sales order, you have the option of creating a suggested PO. You can also create a suggested transfer. The suggested POs, which we covered in another series on the purchasing process, the suggested POs does not create an actual PO, but it creates a file. So if I create a suggested PO for a specific vendor, when I go to create the purchase order for that vendor, I have the option of bringing in those suggested POs. This is a good functionality because depending on your business, if you do a lot of back ordering, a lot of clients don't really carry a lot of stock. You're placing orders all day long. And then in the orders, at the end of the day, you're going to create purchase orders to order the merchandise. You can do it this way here. You can also create a suggested transfer. If you're dealing with multi-locations, maybe you don't have it in this warehouse, but you have it in another warehouse, you can create a transfer so the merchandise can be transferred over. Let's just create a suggested PO. And again, here we can see our information. Again, like we saw before. We have the header information up here. We have all our corresponding options. You can see here that these 3 are turned on. Those are the ones that are popping up, but you can actually set up more. We have some other options for header and line details. Again, we have the lost sales entry and the substitute items. So we have the ability of creating all this while we go along. We can also do it here by adding a line. And we can also go here by inserting a line. If we want to stop the confirmation, we can stop the confirmation. We can roll the order back. So we're not going to do anything. We can set it up. We can archive. We have an archiving system. That's another webinar series that we have. FACTS has an archiving system to archive all documents. We can look at the header information, again, we saw. We can look at the line details. In this case, we're going to select Done. Okay. Now this window pops up. You can see here that we had a deposit. We have some options. We can leave it as a deposit. We can set this balance to go on account, or we can actually pay it here. So we have the ability to change our shipping address. We have the ability of our freight. We can do our freight as prepaid collect, so on. We can look at payments. We can see we had that one payment here. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and click OK. We're going to print the invoice now. And again, we can sort it for shipping if we want for the warehouse. We click OK. Send this to our file here. And again, you can see the deposit, information stored. So we see our order confirmation. What we've done is this allows us to go in, take an existing order, and turn it into an invoice. We can also do direct invoice entry. Again, the screen is the same as you saw with all the other screens in FACTS. Here we're just actually creating an invoice like an over-the-counter or a direct invoice. We're creating it not from a sales order or not from anything or quotes. We're creating it directly. We have that option to go through here. We can do credit memos. Again, if we have to return, we can do the credit memos. We also have a return system, which we'll show in detail in another webinar series. We can actually do customer returns, basically create the return authorization and then convert the return authorization into the credit memo, or we can do it here. So now we have our orders. So our end of day now would be to run the daily sales register. So what we're going to do is we're going to look now at the orders we entered. So we're going to click our daily sales register. And again, we're going to look here at the date. For purpose of the demo, we're in our GL current period is June of 2010, and our SO current period is June of 2010. That's why I was using those dates, because as we know from facts, we can post in the current period and one period forward. So again, I'm going to go here and I'm going to put my date. It's telling me it's not a system date. Again, I can select all my warehouses if I want. I can do my partner, and I can do my summary or detail. Let's do a detail. Let's go to our print options. I'm going to use this one right here. We can also, while we're here, we can go to the print options. We can set our default so we don't have to change it each time. It's going to change it here, so it won't default to 3. It'll default to printer 0, which is printing to a file. And again, we can see some information here. We can see some orders we have here. Here's our invoice. You can see this is an order that was done based on this document. Here's our invoice right now. So we're looking at invoice 1929, which came from the sales order 1910. Again, we can see the information, the total amount, the cost. And again, these reports can be edited. So if you want to have this information or not, we can modify the report. But this is our sales register, so we're looking at the information here. We're looking at all the totals here, and we're looking at our cash. This come in. This is to balance our registers at the end of day. And so on. Remember, we know how facts work, so we can run the register. If there's a problem, we don't have to update. We work in a batch print mode. Let's just look at the GL distribution. Again, we can see our GL distribution. So we can see here, this one was a cash sale. This deposit went to a cash clearing account. So we can look here. Again, here's our receivable effect. Here's our inventory. There's our reversing of the deposits. Here's our sales information. Here's our cost of goods. And again, we don't have any inner warehouse cost of goods. So we can look at this. If there's any time, we can stop the process. So if we do not update, what it'll do is allow us to run it again so we can make any changes we want. When we're ready, we're going to update. So now we've updated. If we go back to our daily sales register and put our same date, and we can see here our printers now remained because we've changed our default. Nothing to print. So we've gone ahead and we've updated all the historical information. So that concludes our presentation today about the fax sales order process. To recap what we've discussed, we have some options. We can, and we don't have to do this in any particular if we don't want, but we can actually start with a quote. This gives us the quote entry, allows us to enter a quote. That information can be saved. We can then take that quote. We can convert that quote into a sales order if we wish. And then that sales order can be confirmed into an invoice. So we have our quote entry. We can print our quotes. We want to batch print. We can also do our quote removal. We can remove quotes based on the expiration dates, based on if the quote has already been closed, it's been turned into an order, and so on. We can then look at our sales orders, order entry, and when we confirm the quote's going to actually create an order. We can go to order entry. We can enter our sales order. We can take a deposit if we want on that order. Maybe it's a special order and we require a 10% deposit before we proceed. We can do that. We have our pick ticket print. So again, we can batch print our pick tickets or reprint our pick tickets. Again, a lot of people use that to print all the back orders. End of day, we want to take a look at back orders. Then what we do is we can go to our invoice entry. Order confirmation allows us to take an order that we've created and confirm it or turn it into a invoice. We can also do direct invoice entry. We can also do a direct credit memo if we want for returns. And then at the end of the day, we run our daily sales register. We check everything, and we go ahead and post. We can also interface the sales and purchase order with the purchasing system. Let's just go through that one again. So we can do an order. Again, we're going to put our item in here. So in this case, you can see here that we have available here, and we have on hand and committed and on orders. We're going to go here and we're going to put 10. What we're going to do here is instead of committing these, we're going to put these on back order. And again, you can see our price option screen coming up. And the reason why we're putting it on back order, when we do have a back order, we have the option of creating the purchase order. And you can see this. And again, we do have another webinar series on the purchasing process. But this option does a couple things. We can choose not to create a purchase order. At that point, just leave it on back order. We can create a suggested purchase order. Suggested purchase order is not an actual purchase order. It saves the information in a file. And what happens is when I actually go into the purchasing system and create a purchase order, I have the option to bring in or import suggested POs. This is a nice functionality because what happens is a lot of clients, let's say, don't really carry a lot of stock. They place orders. They enter all the orders all day long. They're creating the suggested POs. Because I don't want to create several POs for the same vendor for different orders. I want to batch it all together to send it to my vendor. So what I'm doing is I'm creating suggested POs all day long. And then at the end of the day, I can go in and I can create a purchase order for that vendor and import all the suggested POs for all the items that I purchased from that vendor. I can also do the same functionality with a suggested transfer. If I have multiple locations and I have the merchandise in another store, and I want to transfer the merchandise here on a delivery, I can actually create a suggested transfer. The transfer program behaves like the purchase order program, that when you go in to create a transfer receipt, it'll ask you if you want to import the suggested transfers. So you can do that. And again, the option is to do nothing and just not create it. We're going to create the suggested PO. We're going to click OK. And now the PO is created. We press F4, and we click Done. Again, our order's over. Our pick ticket now. And we're done. So again, we've seen that order entry system, how we can interface with the purchasing system. We also see that we can batch print our pick tickets. So once again, that concludes our series today, our session on Infor FACTS' sales process. We covered the quotes, the orders, and the invoicing, as well as the end of day. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our website. You can visit us at www.michellgroup.com to view it any time. Once again, thank you for your time.